Thank you for joining me on 13 Plus. I'm Kelly Lichter, and this is On the Docket, a weekly recap of crime and court in and around the state of Michigan. This week, we're breaking down the plea of a Big Rapids police officer who pled no contest to sexually abusing a young family member, and a deep dive into the sentencing of 3 men convicted in the murder of a 20-year-old in Muskegon. All of that and more is on the docket. We start today on our first case on the docket, and that's that former Big Rapids police officer out of Newaygo County. On March 18th, a former Big Rapids police officer was sentenced for sexually abusing a young family member. Ryan Dornbos was charged last year, and court documents say the abuse went on for years. I was in court when Dornbos had to face the young victim and her mother before being locked up. Former Big Rapids police officer Ryan Dornbos was solemn in court Tuesday as he learned he will spend at least 10 years in prison for sexually abusing a young family member. Dornbos pled no contest to sexually abusing the family member for years at a home in Newaygo County.
No contest basically means you are guilty, but you just don't want to admit it. You know what you did, but you don't want to admit it, so you don't have to be in prison longer. You're disgusting.
With support from her mother, the young victim took the stand, addressing Dornbos before he was sentenced. The family and the judge agreed to let us use her voice on air.
I trusted you and I loved you. I lost that trust, but hope I cannot let you ruin my life. You deserve more than 10 years.
Her mother also took the stand, saying all her daughter wanted was a paternal figure in her life, which Dornbos took advantage of.
She's somebody's daughter. She's my daughter, and she was your daughter. You were a police officer. You were a father, and you molested your daughter.
But for Dornbos' attorney, quote, allegations submitted to the judge he believes unfairly targeted his client.
This is not a stoning. And everybody who has a problem with my client doesn't get to pick up a stone and throw something at him.
Dornbos took a plea deal in February, which had a mandatory minimum of 10 years in prison. Judge Robert Springstead felt anything different would be a disservice to the victim and for Dornbos.
This is a sentence that was negotiated between the attorneys who had the most information available to them.
He sentenced Dornbos to the mandatory minimum with a maximum imprisonment of 40 years. Dornbos was also alleged to have stalked the victim's mother, Jessica Dornbos, by texting her using a new phone number. Dornbos denied the accusation, and a charge of aggravated stalking was dropped with his plea deal. You can read more about this sentencing on our website, 13onyourside.com, by searching for the headline, Former Big Rapids Police Officer Sentenced for Sexually Abusing Young Family Member. And in Kalamazoo County, a man is in custody for allegedly setting fire to an unhoused man's belongings, including his blankets, while the man was asleep. We now know that man is Scott Hassler, who appeared in front of a Kalamazoo County judge on March 17th for the fire in front of the Kalamazoo Public Library. Our Jeremiah Brown reports while the victim is not injured, this is still an arson investigation.
A fire growing underneath the overhang of the Kalamazoo Public Library quickly put out by first responders late Sunday night.
Approximately 11:45 last night, a subject approached another subject near the front entrance of the Kalamazoo Public Library. For whatever reason, there was a fire was ignited shortly thereafter.
Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety arrested 43-year-old Scott Daniel Hassler. Hassler faces multiple felonies, including assault and third-degree arson charges for allegedly setting the fire where another man was sleeping. Court documents say Hassler had been acquainted with the man and would have known the possessions belonged to him. Kalamazoo Fire Marshal Scott Brooks says the blankets the man was sleeping under also caught fire. Fortunately, he managed to escape. He says camera footage and what they found at the scene points to this fire being intentionally set.
So the contents that were there, obviously a lot of them were personal contents and they were personal belongings. There were no other what we would call competent ignition sources in the area. Anything else that could have sparked a fire. No electricity, nothing like that could have been used to cause this fire. So all of those things led to the totality to assume that this fire is a incendiary fire with human involvement.
Using the city's camera systems, Brooks says the suspect was quickly found and that the suspect denied knowing anything about the incident. Court documents describe Hassler being found with a torch-style lighter and a glass pipe with suspected methamphetamine residue inside. KDPS confirmed both individuals are unhoused. Brooks says the victim accepted some of the assistance the department offered.
If you see something, say something. After watching the video, we watched multiple cars drive by the library with the fire going, and we only received the one phone call. So if you see something, just say something.
Now to Ottawa County, where a woman will spend over a decade in prison for a crash that killed a bicyclist last summer. Janelle Poore from Allendale was accused of being under the influence in the crash in Georgetown Township last June. Poore was found guilty by a jury in February. Deputies say they were called to the area of Fillmore Street near 28th Avenue in Georgetown Township, where they say Poore was driving a Chevy eastbound on Fillmore. Investigators found when she got to the curved portion of the road, she crossed the center line and hit Douglas Schwartzma of Grandville while riding his bike on the westbound shoulder. He was airlifted to the hospital where he died from his injuries. He was wearing a helmet. Poore was also sent to the hospital with minor injuries. She was sentenced to 15 to 30 years in prison with credit for 271 days served. And in Walker, a Grand Rapids man is facing a murder charge after a drunk driving crash killed a mother of two. Court documents say Justin Armstrong was driving on Maynard Avenue south of Butterworth Drive Southwest just before 1 in the morning on December 29th when he crashed his car with a passenger inside. The passenger was Erica Werner of Ottawa County. Documents go on to say Armstrong was driving 100 miles per hour, well over the speed limit, when he crashed into a tree, ejected Werner from the car. First responders found Armstrong pinned in the car, and Werner was unfortunately dead at the scene. Investigators noted odor of intoxicants on Armstrong, and when they tested his BAC, it was 1.5 times over the legal limit. Armstrong is facing charges of second-degree murder and operating while intoxicated causing death. If convicted, he could face life in prison. Werner leaves behind two daughters, ages 7 and 14. Werner's sister started a GoFundMe for the family, which you can find on our website, 13onyourside.com. Also in Walker, a 19-year-old pedestrian was seriously injured after being hit late at night on March 17th. Walker police say the pedestrian was hit by a 16-year-old driver on the intersection of Lake Michigan Drive and Ferndale Avenue Northwest around 10 p.m. The driver was traveling westbound. The pedestrian was taken to the hospital with serious injuries. Walker Police Captain Andy Veen said the car pulled over after the crash to check on the pedestrian, and while that car was pulled over, it was struck by another vehicle. The road was closed in both directions for several hours. This incident remains under investigation. Anyone with information is being asked to contact Walker PD or Silent Observer. In more vehicle-related news, we had breaking news on March 19th after a car crashed into a Kalamazoo gas station, injuring 7 people with 1 man in critical condition. The crash happened around 1 in the afternoon at a speedway on West Nedged Avenue. 7 people were injured. 2 men were taken to the hospital. Kalamazoo officials say 1 man is stable, while the other, like I mentioned, remains in serious condition. A gas pump was also damaged in the crash. Investigators say the driver is cooperating with officials, and the investigation into the cause of the crash is still ongoing. We're told there will not be an update until later next week. And when you think of car chases, you think law enforcement chase the vehicle with more cars, but now they can also do it from the sky. The Grand Rapids Police Department got help from Michigan State Police on March 14th to track down a suspect using a helicopter. GRPD pulled over a motorcyclist who drove away, and the MSP chopper was in the air and was able to track down the driver who rode into a wooded area to avoid police. Our Kiara Patterson spoke with Grand Rapids Police Chief Eric Winstrom on how the MSP copter thermal imaging technology helped track down the motorcyclist.
Not in pursuit. It's a motorcycle with a unknown male driver, black coat.
Flying over the streets of Grand Rapids.
Yeah. 333, we got eyes on him. Coming up to Buchanan, will be southbound.
On Friday, March 14th, the camera on a Michigan State Police helicopter captured the chase of a motorcyclist. who fled from Grand Rapids police during a traffic stop. He tried to lose officers by going off-road.
And he's going off-road on a trail.
An officer was patrolling in a squad car on Division Street and saw a motorcycle traveling without a TED light on and also speeding. It actually turns out it was a dirt bike, so not legally registered to be driven on the road. That rider on the dirt bike took off from the officer.
Yeah, now he's running with the bike back westbound.
Grand Rapids Police Chief Eric Winstrom says MSP, already monitoring radio traffic and flying a helicopter in the area, quickly located the motorcyclist and assisted GRPD using thermal imaging technology.
The mapping in that helicopter's camera system overlays on the thermal imaging that they see. They can, in real time, get on the air and say that individual is, heading northbound. We've stepped back on pursuits. We're stepping forward on adding technology to take the place of that.
Just hit the side of a car, now he's running eastbound.
Moments later, GRPD officers on the ground caught up with the suspect and made the arrest. Chief Winstrom says chases on the ground are dangerous for both the driver and the community. He says the helicopter played a key role in preventing the man's escape.
Because it was a low-level crime of simply speeding, driving recklessly, no headlight, we probably wouldn't have taken those steps. So he probably, without the helicopter, would have been home free.
Coming up after this short break, I'll take you inside the courtroom to a triple sentencing for 3 men who murdered a 20-year-old in Muskegon during a botched drug deal. That's on the docket next. 3 men charged with shooting and killing a 20-year-old Muskegon man will spend years in prison. Even though they claim he was not the intended target, the judge said they still need to face consequences. In the morning of December 13th, 2023, Muskegon police were sent to the 1500 block of Hoyt, where they found 20-year-old Dominic Sugan, who had been shot. He later died at the hospital from his injuries. Investigators say Kevion Nolan, who was a close friend of the Sugan family, was driving a car with Deshaun Bates and Eric Wesley inside when Bates and Wesley shot Sugan. But Bates had beef with another target and not Dominic. I was in the courtroom for over an hour as the 3 men were sentenced and confronted by Dominic's mother during her son's victim impact statements. Over a year after Dominic Sugan's murder, the 3 men held responsible were sentenced in front of a packed courtroom Thursday. Deshaun Bates, Eric Wesley, and Kevion Nolan will each spend decades in prison for the December 2023 killing.
I lost Dominic's father to gun violence, and now I lost my son to gun violence.
On the morning of December 13th, officials say the 3 men shot Sugan on Hoyt Street in Muskegon. The intended target was another man with Sugan, officials say, who Bates had issues with. They say Nolan, who was a close friend of the Sugan family, was driving the car with Wesley and Bates inside, but the latter 2 were the ones who pulled the trigger. Before sentencing, Sugan's mother, Stephanie Sugan, addressed the men one by one, starting with Nolan, who she says was like a son to her.
You are completely soulless for this. I hope Dominic haunts you for the rest of your pathetic life. And I hope he brings you the pain you brought to his mother.
Sugan's mom questioned Wesley, asking what compelled him to shoot her son in the first place.
My son will never walk through the door of my home again. Not just my home, but his home. You are a murderer, Eric. A stone-cold murder.
And Sugan says her son didn't even really know Bates, but because of the beef between him and the other man with Dominic, she lost her son to gun violence.
Only a coward pulls a trigger. You killed my son, who had absolutely nothing to do with anything or did anything to you.
While she believes no amount of time served would bring back Dominic, Judge Annette Smedley says the men need to be held accountable. She sentenced Wesley to up to 95 years, Bates to a century, and Nolan up to 50 years in prison. Let's break down those charges. Bates pled no contest to second-degree murder. Wesley pled guilty to second-degree murder and weapons felony firearm. And Kevion Nolan pled guilty to assault with intent to murder. Each man also had different sentencing guidelines. Wesley was sentenced to 2 years for a weapons felony firearm, consecutive with a 30-year minimum to 95-year maximum sentence for the second-degree murder charge. Bates was sentenced to 400 months to 100 years for second-degree murder. That's around 30 40 years to 100 years. And now Nolan was sentenced to 110 months to 50 years for assault with the intent to murder. 110 months is roughly 9 years. One thing I didn't show was the prosecutor telling the judge Nolan did what he could to take accountability for his actions. And his attorney says he turned himself in tears. He told the judge if he could turn back time and go back, Dominic was like a brother to him, and his mom like a mother.
I just want to say that I'm completely sorry to the victim's family, to the courts, that if I could rewind everything, I would. And he was like a brother to me. His mother was like a mother to me. And I'm just full of regret. I wish I could take everything back. And I am truly sorry. And I'm willing to spend the rest of my life making that up to them, even if they never forgive me.
The judge did give him credit for what he did and for willing to testify against the other two, which likely played into his lower sentence, and that he wasn't the one who had a gun. All men received 449 days credit for time served. And the man accused of shooting and killing another man during a birthday party for his 1-year-old son at a Kentwood hotel has been sentenced. Atavy Smith was accused of gunning down Jakari Garrett. Garrett was from Georgia. He faced charges of open murder, gang membership, and felony firearm. According to court documents, the March 2023 shooting was heavily linked to gang activity, with police believing Smith was part of the 30 Boys gang and believe the group targeted Garrett, with law enforcement claiming a gang-affiliated social media account had been threatening Garrett before the shooting. Detectives say Garrett walked from the pool to his hotel room at the Delta Motel on 28th Street when he was shot 5 times by Smith. They also say they have surveillance video from the hotel that shows Smith in a ski mask clutching the front of his waistband moments after the shooting, leaving the lobby. Garrett was at the hotel, court documents say, because his family rented 2 rooms for the child's party, and festivities were being held in the pool area. He was shot before he made it from the pool to the hotel rooms. During an unrelated incident on May 16th, Grand Rapids police were chasing after Smith, and in the process, authorities said he dropped a .40 caliber Glock. A Michigan State Police lab linked the firearm to the shooting at the Delta Motel and confirmed all 6 casings recovered from the hotel hallway. Smith took a plea deal on March 17th, with a judge agreeing to a 13-year sentence. And after videos circulating on social media showed Grand Rapids police officers responding to and breaking up a large crowd on St. Patrick's Day weekend, some are criticizing how the officers did it, saying they used excessive force. The body camera footage has been released after the social media videos started going viral. And our Kiara Patterson spoke with Chief Eric Winstrom to learn more about why officers were called to the scene and why they used the tactics they did.
You're about to get sprayed! You're about to get sprayed!
Body camera footage in downtown Grand Rapids Friday night shows a large crowd celebrating St. Patrick's Day at the intersection of Oaks and Commerce during a music event.
Officers monitored that throughout the night, and they saw it get as large as about 400 individuals. Unfortunately, about 2:20, 2:30 in the morning, officers in the area noted that a large fight had started in the crowd, so they moved in to take action, and unfortunately, it escalated from there with fights sort of happening all over.
The footage shows police firing pepper ball guns near the crowd, along with several arrests being made.
You're under arrest! You're under arrest!
No one's cooperating with the police officers. Incredibly dangerous for everyone.
After concerns circulated on social media about the police response to the crowd, Grand Rapids Police Chief Eric Winstrom says his team acted appropriately.
I reached out to the officers and praised them for the exceptional work that they did, because we're not here talking about a young person shot downtown or an individual seriously hurt from these fights. We're just talking about pepper spray and pepper balls. So that's a win for us and for the city.
No one was injured and 5 arrests were made. Chief Winstrom encourages people to enjoy themselves, but stresses the importance of listening to authorities and maintaining peaceful behavior.
Police officers have a right to bring peace to an area when something lawless like this is taking place. I'd love to see our venues get a lot of activity in the downtown area and across the city, so we embrace that. We just want people to do it peacefully.
Kiara Patterson, 13 on your side.
Coming up after this break, multiple shots were fired at a mobile home park in Byron Township, which the Kent County Sheriff found was the result of a domestic argument. I have the Sheriff Department's response and further details on the situation. That's on the docket next. Kent County investigators say shots fired in a Byron Township community were the result of domestic violence. It happened in the evening of March 18th. I talked with the Kent County Sheriff's Office, who say this could have been much worse. A Kent County woman is in jail after shooting at her husband Tuesday evening, according to the Sheriff's Department. Deputies were called to Cutler Estates mobile home village in Byron Township on reports of shots fired. They say the woman shot at her husband's car but did not hit him.
We want to prevent that from happening, which is why we do go out to simple domestic arguments. Something like this where officers are going where shots are already fired. Priority one is safety.
Sergeant Scott Dietrich with the Kent County Sheriff's Office says even when no one is hurt, it's important they investigate incidents like domestic arguments. With children and other community members around, it's important to keep others safe as well as people directly in the situation.
In mobile home communities, there's a lot of people there, a lot of kids are outside. This happened right after school, so in a lot of communities like that, they have playgrounds and kids walking around, so yeah, it's very concerning to us when we hear a shots fired call come out in a community like that.
And while no one was hurt, Dietrich says they would rather put themselves in the middle to help calm the situation.
That little break helps a lot of people just take a step back, take a breather, say, okay, I can go here for the night, or yeah, we're done arguing, this isn't right. So we would rather be involved and step in the middle of it and be a resource for people.
But if it does escalate, Dietrich hopes others call authorities before it gets out of hand.
While it might seem common to be in an argument with someone, these things can escalate, and it's unfortunate that they do. But it's up to the community and up to people to realize when something's going too far and that police need to step in and do something about it.
For every domestic incident the sheriff's deputies respond to, Dietrich says they have pamphlets with resources to help victims. Information on the pamphlets include local and national domestic violence helplines and shelter addresses. Kentwood Police Department is investigating after a stabbing early in the morning on March 20th. Around 4:45 a.m., Kentwood PD responded to a fight on Nature Trail Drive Southeast. When they arrived, they found a man with a stab wound to his chest. He was taken to the hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. Another man was detained at the scene and is being questioned regarding the incident. Also in Kentwood, charges against a woman who locked another woman inside a Kentwood storage facility, deputies say, that caught fire are dropped. A Kent County judge dropped charges of involuntary manslaughter and unlawful imprisonment against Morgan Wingeier on March 20th. She was accused of locking Corinne Gaston inside a storage unit, which then caught on fire. Gaston's body was found inside back in November. Weeks after the fire, investigators arrested Morgan Wingeier in the case, initially charging her with manslaughter and unlawful imprisonment. Court documents detail that Gaston was living in the storage unit that Wingeier's mother rented for her. Wingeier didn't want her mother to know Gaston was inside the unit, according to court documents, so she locked her inside. A Kentwood police detective said in the court documents that Wingeier locked Gaston in the storage shed for nearly 23 hours without food, water, light, electricity, or a way of contacting the outside world. And according to detectives, Wingeier said her original plan was to go back to the storage unit a few hours later and unlock it. But she never went back because the things she was going to do took longer than she expected. The Kentwood Fire Department determined that the fire started in the storage unit where Gaston was found, but they were unable to determine the cause of the fire. The Kent County Medical Examiner ruled Gaston died from a meth overdose. The judge called the event a tragic circumstance and said Wingeier made a poor choice and that Gaston willingly stayed inside the unit. Now to around the state, new details in Pontiac. A Southeast mother charged with child abuse after her children were found abandoned in a Pontiac home. There's more details now. The Oakland County prosecutor is asking a judge to end Kelly Bryant's communication privileges for violating the court's order to not contact her children. Jail records show that Bryant called the children's caregiver 10 times recently. She also had other inmates call the caregiver for her. And a hockey doctor pled no contest in an Oakland County Circuit Court to multiple counts of criminal sexual conduct, most stemming from incidents involving teen boys he met while providing medical assistance to youth hockey teams, the prosecutor says. Hockey doctor Zvi Levrin from Farmington pled no contest to 28 counts from 4 different cases with 13 different victims. Charges include 11 counts of criminal sexual conduct in the 4th degree, 10 counts of criminal sexual conduct in the 3rd degree, 3 counts of criminal sexual conduct in the 2nd degree, 2 counts of child sexually abusive material, and 2 counts of child sexually abusive activity. The Oakland County prosecutor says he met many of the young boys while providing that medical assistance. Victims testified that Levrin groped them when they sought sports physicals or treatment for injuries and showered with them after workouts. During earlier court hearings, Jones had described Levrin as an eccentric gentleman who did not touch patients for sexual purposes. Each count of CSC 3rd degree, the highest charge, is punishable by up to 15 years in prison, and the prosecutor says she intends to ask the court for a maximum sentence. The allegations drew comparisons to another Michigan sports doctor, Larry Nasser, who was in prison for assaulting teens and young women, including Olympic gymnasts, and for possessing images of sexual exploitation of children. A sentencing hearing will be held on April 29th in Oakland County Circuit Court. And in Troy, a Corewell Health Hospital was placed on lockdown on March 20th after an active shooter was reported in the hospital parking lot that morning. The suspect is in custody, and the hospital has returned back to normal operations after the lockdown on what police called an isolated incident. Troy's police department say that around 7 a.m., a Corewell employee shot another employee several times, hitting the victim twice in the arm and then fleeing the scene. The victim is a 25-year-old man from Troy and is currently in stable condition.
They were friends at some point. Just in the very quick investigation we've done this morning, it sounds like there was some kind of falling out recently, but that's all we know.
And that suspect is in custody, and the lockdown at Corewell, Troy, has been lifted. Thanks for joining me in this episode of On the Docket on 13 Plus. We have new episodes releasing every week, taking you into the courtroom for the latest updates and deep dives on crime in and around West Michigan. In the meantime, we will bring you the latest on crime in court, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com, and when breaking news affects you and your community. We stream live on 13 Plus with what you need to know right when you need to know. We'll see you next time with updates on what's on the docket.